Hello, everyone, and welcome to ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. Thank you guys for tuning in. We have a lot to talk about, and I know it's a Cowboys show. Don't worry, we'll get some Cowboy stuff in there, but we need to talk about what's happening in the NFL. Brian Flores is suing the New York Giants, the NFL as a whole, but he is naming in his class action lawsuit, he is naming the Giants, the Broncos, and the Dolphins. We'll talk about it on tonight's show. We will also get into Random Thought Tuesday. And finally, Tom Brady has officially, this time for real, officially retired from the NFL. So thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you share the show. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, let your friends know about ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. I see the YouTube chat is already active. What is up, Lumen, who is a Titans fan but supports ADC Sports Dallas? He says, Mauricio, Juju is available. Dak would like him. Interesting that Juju Smith-Schuster will be indeed available, but I don't know. I have a feeling like Smith-Schuster is definitely going to land somewhere outside of Pittsburgh. That's like my instant reaction, because it seems to me that he's in this spot for a prove-it year, and I don't think he will find that with the Pittsburgh Steelers. However, I don't know if the Cowboys will be interested in bringing him in as a wide receiver 3. Not a super bad idea. Just Blaze asking what happened to Flores. We'll get into all of it. It is crazy. What the lawsuit says and alleges, it is some crazy stuff. We'll talk about it after we start the show officially. So let's do so. Let's do so right off the bat. Let's start the show officially. We will skip the intro for tonight's show. Thank you guys for being here. Remember to always check out adcsports.com/Dallas for more Cowboys content, for more Mavericks content. Check it out on the site. We have some great writers covering the Cowboys and some great writers covering the Mavericks. And of course, Lumen knows it in the chat. ADC Sports also covers the Titans, the Kansas City Chiefs, and hey, some big things in store for ADC Sports Dallas. I'm excited about it. So let's get into this conversation. It is maybe an accurate conversation, unfortunately, because this feels to me like what the NFL was trying to avoid and yet failed to avoid it. Because if you think about it, this lawsuit is inevitable. It was inevitable. It was a matter of time until someone stood up and actually sued the NFL. Because we can talk about the Rooney Rule all we want, but we have found time and time again that it simply is not enough. And you can see it in a lot of different ways. You can see it by looking at pictures of each and every one of the general managers that are involved in the NFL, of the owners, of head coaches in the league. You can see it by the fact that Eric Bieniemy has not been hired by any NFL team. Because forget about being a poor interviewer. Those reports, in my opinion, they're just dumb. The lawsuit from Brian Flores, for those of you who missed it, and I know that Just is asking about the lawsuit and what it is about. The lawsuit is against the NFL because of a systemic racist problem that exists in the NFL, in the process of hiring coaches in the league. And here are some details about it. Number one, the fact that he was fired from the Miami Dolphins was right away surprising to a lot of us. Like, it didn't make sense right away. And then there were some reports about possibilities as to why it had happened. And most of them talked about the fact that Brian Flores was not a huge Tua Tagovailoa guy and that maybe he wanted to look elsewhere for a quarterback, potentially Deshaun Watson, but that the front office did indeed like Tagovailoa. But now it might be more complicated than that, because in his lawsuit, Brian Flores is saying that the Miami Dolphins owner was actually offering Brian Flores $100,000 per game that the Dolphins lost. So we're talking about literally tanking games and the owner of the Dolphins asking him to lose them in exchange of $100,000. This is what Brian Flores is claiming in his lawsuit. That is one of the most outrageous things. Now, number two, the fact that the Broncos interview to be a head coach was a champ, basically, with the front office members for Denver. By the way, Broncos are for sale, apparently. Hopefully, I don't know. I don't know, but hopefully they end up with better owners. Anyways, the Broncos think is that the front office of Denver showed up late to the interview and that it was all a champ, that it wasn't a serious process by the Broncos in interviewing Brian Flores. And then this is the worst part of it all. This is where it gets way tougher, because there are Bill Belichick texts included as evidence in Brian Flores' lawsuit. Not as in Belichick doing anything wrong. What happened is that Brian Flores included text messages from Bill Belichick in which Belichick congratulated Brian Flores for landing the New York Giants job. To which Flores responds, "Is there something that you know that I don't know?" And it turns out that Belichick misread a text, and he thought that Brian Flores was going to be named the next Giants coach, but it turns out that it was actually Brian Daboll. So he mixed up his Bryans. And you might think, well, that isn't a big deal. Bill Belichick just messed up a text. I've done that before, maybe. But here's where it gets interesting. Brian Flores had not even interviewed for the Giants job. So what the lawsuit is claiming is that the Giants already knew who they were hiring, and as evidence, he's got Bill Belichick telling him that he has heard that the Giants have deciding on a certain Brian, and that is Brian Daboll. And Belichick says that in the text all before Brian Flores had actually interviewed with the Giants. That text is the most impressive thing about the entire lawsuit. And I agree with Gotti that he says that text is huge and making the NFL look bad. It is. It is definitely is huge, because we all get back to the Rooney Rule argument that you say, all right, the Rooney Rule, maybe it makes sense, but at the end of the day, it's not working for the NFL. And it has become sort of an item in a long list in a long checklist that NFL teams need to complete before completing a formal hire of a head coach. And it is sad and it is upsetting that it has become just like this requisite for NFL teams, and that they don't take it seriously, and that they don't use these interviews for what the rule is meant to, which is attacking the diversity problem that the NFL has faced for many, many years. Because when you get a text from a head coach, and when you get evidence that a team has already decided who's going to be their next head coach, all before you have interviewed Brian Flores in this particular example, it is quite outrageous. And I will tell you what is even more outrageous, because I know that people will try to keep defending, in my opinion, the NFL. But the fact is that this problem is clearly from the NFL, league-wide, and their statement to me is the perfect evidence for it. Because there was a public relations statement from the NFL that came out shortly, and I'm talking shortly, I'm talking about 2 hours, not even a day, not even anything like that. And the NFL put out a statement saying that Flores' claims have no merit. Right off the bat, 2 hours later. And people have been asking this in social media. I'm definitely not the first person to point this out. But how 2 hours later, after the lawsuit was, revealed, filed, I don't know what the correct word or term is legally, how after 2 hours have you reached that conclusion that it's without merit? That is one of the most frustrating things about this whole thing. And usually, just a small parenthesis, what we do here on Primetime and in the morning show and in ADC Sports in general, we love getting fans involved in the conversation in the chat. through Facebook, through YouTube, and through all the platforms and the show's stream. And that is why we always come up with some questions to get you involved, because you get a lot of insight and value from all sorts of comments. In this one, though, I didn't want to come up with a question because maybe it was going to close the comment section to specific answers, when I really just, what I wanted to do is just open up the comment section to share the frustrations or everything that you want to share. To be honest, I am very, very upset about this whole thing, and it sucks for the NFL. I do believe, though, that this lawsuit, as the title reads, I do believe that Brian Flores' lawsuit might be one big step to really change what the NFL is doing league-wide, because this is different from anything that has happened before. And this is also a class action lawsuit. And I'm not a lawyer, definitely not an expert in law, but what's important about this is that people can join the lawsuit. Other coaches that have felt discriminated, that have felt like they're just getting these interviews as teams just checking the box in their checklist that they have interviewed a minority head coach. Coaches can join this, and it's difficult to know what others will do. Like, for example, it's difficult to speculate on whether or not Eric Bieniemy, for example, would jump into this class action lawsuit, because as Brian Flores states in his own lawsuit, he says, I know that I'm risking coaching the game that I love. He knows that he's risking losing the opportunity to continue to do what he loves with this lawsuit. Sort of like a Colin Kaepernick situation, maybe. And of course, a lot of difference in it. But, there have been a lot of rumors as to the NFL blackballing Colin Kaepernick and things like that. So, man, it's just, hopefully the NFL does the right thing. Hopefully the NFL, and they're already started with the left foot, by the way. They're already off the wrong foot. But we'll see what happens. Let's see. As an owner, you have the right to hire whoever you want, says Roger Hernandez. And I understand that. But you got to agree that there's a problem when Cliff Kingsbury, fired from Texas Tech, was hired by the Cardinals, and then you get, for example, an Eric Bieniemy that has been to 4 straight AFC championship games and has yet to land a job. Let's see. That would be scary, says Lumen. I don't know. The lack of minority head coach in the league is proof, says Gotti, because it is ridiculous, to be honest. Let's see. Why would you say that interview a minority coach and get a draft pick? That never should be attached together, says Jackie Smith. I don't know what the answer is, to be honest. I don't know. I admit that. I admit that right off the bat. I really don't know what is the correct answer. Is it some sort of monetary compensation? Is it in the way with draft picks like Jackie Smith was bringing up in the chat, or is it otherwise? But it's got to be something else. It cannot be just the Rooney Rule. Dallas Young says, I agree with everything you're saying, bro. It's BS. Let's see. Marvin Lewis is Gotti. Marvin Lewis was interviewed after Jason Garrett was gone, says Rue Glock. The owners are always looking for white dude. Whoops, I mean the right dude, says Ed Rogers. And it sucks. But it's generally, it's true. Because I don't know. Burner account says, for example, not all the teams do it, though. Maybe there's some teams that don't. Let's agree to that. Let's agree that maybe there are exceptions to this problem in the NFL. That might be true. But it seems that in the majority of cases, it is true. And when you have a league that is literally coming 2 hours after the lawsuit was revealed and saying that the allegations have no merit, that's a system problem. That's a team, that's a league coming out there and not saying that, all right, we will investigate what happened with the Broncos situation. We will investigate what happened with the Giants hiring of Brian Daboll. The NFL is not coming out and saying that. They're coming out and saying it's got no merit. 2 hours later. Do you honestly think that 2 hours is enough to conclude a league investigation in the Giants process, in the Broncos process, and in the Miami Dolphins situation about the potential tank bribes? I believe it's how we will call them in the next few days. Whew. Tommy says you would think he'd be at the top of the list for teams that have been looking for a head coach. I heard that he doesn't interview well, says Tommy. And I don't know if Tommy is talking about Bienemy. David Quesada says, where are the Mexican coaches if that's the case? Come on, man, says David Quesada. But I don't know if David says it like disagreeing with what I'm saying. If that's the case, I don't know, because I don't know if he's replying to other things, to a different comment. But if that's directed to what I'm saying right now in the show, I will just say, come on. Are we really going to bring that up as an argument against what is going on right now in the NFL? I really don't think that is the way to go. No, 2 hours is not enough time to investigate it, says Kenneth Fraser. To me, it's as clear as that. Even if he doesn't win the case, it's bringing light to something that needs to be changed, says Gotti. People have been calling this the lawsuit that the NFL was fearing. Can you guys hear my dog going absolutely crazy? I'm starting to wonder what is up with Eric V. I've heard a lot of mixed reviews about him. Oh, all right. It's a frustrating thing. Definitely, it's a frustrating thing in the NFL. I do wonder if you're hearing my dog going bananas. Well, hopefully, the lawsuit ends up somewhere positive. So hopefully it does affect change in the NFL, because it is definitely needed. It is definitely needed. Yes, I can hear him, says Kenneth Fraser. I don't know what is going on. All right, let's try to move on from this topic. It is difficult to move on from it, to be honest, but we need to get into some Cowboys content before the show is over. I get where a lot of the counterpoints come from. David Quesada says that it sounds like a huge dog. It isn't. He's a small schnauzer. He's called Vito Corleone after the Godfather. I understand a lot of the counter arguments from people that say that maybe it's not a systemic risk. But I honestly believe that it is, and I honestly believe that we're seeing a lot of evidence for it. And we have seen for a few years now. Let's see what ends up happening. Anyways, let's get into the Random Thought Tuesday, which is a tradition that was born in last week. We came up with Cowboys Random Thought Tuesday, and this is where you can share any random thought from the Dallas Cowboys that you want. I have one that's been on my mind since this morning, and I have been thinking about it constantly. What is your random thought? What is your random thought about the Dallas Cowboys this Tuesday? We will be doing this weekly. So if you had something come up in your mind about the Cowboys, maybe a potential signing, a potential draft idea, you can drop it in the chat, whether you're watching in the Facebook chat or the YouTube chat. This is Random Thought Tuesday. Here is mine. I will start this off by saying that we have been hearing all week long about things that the Cowboys could learn from the teams that are in the Super Bowl, or they're in the conference championship games. And some of it are X and O stuff, like maybe what we talked about last night about motion at the snap and implementing more of that in the Cowboys offense. You can talk about maybe involving your key players like Amari Cooper and all of that. But I will say that one lesson that the Cowboys could learn from the Bengals, and I'm talking about one lesson that they don't have to wait until September to implement it. This can be done in April. And I'm talking about, could the Cowboys consider drafting a kicker in the NFL draft? I know that it sounds crazy, but think about the Greg Sörlein situation for a moment. We know that the Cowboys had a kicker problem, and the Cowboys knew it very well too. Jerry Jones even alluded to it on the radio, saying that his deficiencies actually affected the Cowboys' game plan. And I know that it sounds crazy, but even McPherson is working out perfectly for the Bengals. He was a fifth-round draft pick. He was automatic on any field goals shorter than 40 yards long. He was also 9 for 11 in 50-plus yard field goals, and I believe he was 6 for 9 in 40 to 49 range. So maybe the Cowboys could be involved in thinking about drafting a kicker in April. I know it sounds crazy, and this is what Random Thought Tuesday is for. You can get crazy with yours. Let's see some of your random thoughts for Tuesday. Kellen Moore and McDaniel are the finalists for the Dolphins job, says Dallas Young. That is right. Let's see. Stevie Mack got himself a new mod partner. Oh, did he? Did Stevie Mack got a new mod partner? I didn't know about that. Stevie Mack says because the tight end draft class is sneaky good, should the Cowboys move on from both Schultz and Jarwin? I wouldn't like that. If the Cowboys want to draft a tight end, I'm super fine with it. Go for it. Get a better player at tight end. But I wouldn't like moving on from both Schultz and Jarwin. I would 100% stay with one of them, especially because if you're going to move on from Jarwin, I would like it to be because you're staying with Schultz, but at least with Jarwin, you have a floor. So good random thought. And it might not be that surprising if it ends up happening. I like it from Stevie Mack. Is the Cowboys front office, says burner account, capable of adapting? Good question. Good question. Chalk says, at the end of the day, Jerry's still going to do what he wants to do. That screws something up. David says, we need a new quarterback. Now, that is random. Because I will tell you, I don't know about that. Random thought, run the damn ball, says Tommy. Dallas Young says, what came first, the chicken or the egg? All right, now that is random. Let's see. Chuck says, if they stick with Sterling, that will tell us ownership is still on the same bull. Hopefully there are more options this offseason because I am not super mad about the Cowboys not moving on from Greg the Leg during the regular season because I was super insisting in the fact that there were not a lot of options out there. You didn't have options to replace Greg the Leg. In free agency, you were not going to trade for a kicker, but I would draft if they draft one in day 3 of the NFL draft, I'm all for it. T says, Miami hires Moore and loses the next 2 seasons to acquire a pick. Says T, that would be random as well. The Rooney rule is for minorities, just not black people, says Gotti. Ooh, that's a strong random thought. Yes, I believe that we will get a kicker during the draft, says Kenneth Fraser. Let's see. Burner account says, random thought, I wonder if the Bengals had already won a Super Bowl if they had kept Bill Walsh. Maybe the West Coast offense would have been named the West Coast offense because it was burned. That offense was burned before Walsh got to San Francisco. That was burned in Cincinnati, actually. I forget what the name of their quarterback was, but he was quite an inaccurate quarterback. And Walsh came up with this timing concept that has become a staple of the West Coast offense and really a necessity in the entire NFL. Maybe history in the NFL would be quite different because the West Coast offense might have evolved over there in San Francisco. They might have still gotten Steve Young. I will tell you that. Cincinnati might have gotten Steve Young because he was the guy to get Young to the 49ers. A lot of other people within this 49ers organization didn't want to draft Steve Young. So maybe he would still gotten it just with the Bengals. And maybe NFL history would be super different one way or another. We need more running backs, as BNC Gaming. I was talking about this with the ADC Sports writers early this morning about the possibility of signing a running back tree in free agency. Corey Clement is set to become a free agent in the offseason. Anyways, guys, that would be it for Random Thought Tuesday. And I will leave you with one more question for the show. And this is a quick one. Tom Brady has officially retired. Do you agree or do you disagree that Tom Brady is the GOAT? And if you don't believe him to be the GOAT in the NFL, who do you believe to be the greatest of all time, the greatest to ever do it in the world of the NFL? Each year that has gone by, more people have joined the agree party of this question. More people have agreed that Tom Brady is the absolute GOAT in the NFL. And I will not bother you with any sort of stats because by now you've heard it all. You have heard it all about Tom Brady. How many playoff games he has won, how many regular seasons game he has won. I will not bother you with that today. Instead, speaking of Bill Walsh, I will tell you what, Joe Montana and Walsh get a lot of credit for revolutionizing the passing game in pro football with the West Coast offense. Sure, it already existed, but Joe Montana and Bill Walsh made it popular when they were in San Francisco. Thus, it has been named the West Coast offense. I think that Josh McDaniels and Tom Brady did not get as many credit for a similar thing that they did in 2007. Not similar because they didn't invent the spread offense or the shotgun formation. Obviously, they didn't come up with that. You guys know who came up with the shotgun formation. I don't have to tell you on ADC Sports Dallas. I know that. But they sure popularized it in the NFL, and they sure used it at a rate that no one had before in the NFL. Because in 2007, you began to see that change in the trend of how NFL teams lined up, and it was the Patriots using shotgun formation more times than they were under center, using spread formation and 11 personnel more than any other team in the NFL. So I think that part of Tom Brady's legacy is not always insisted on, and I think that is one of the biggest things about his career. And the fact that he played in so many different systems. People like to say that Brady is a system quarterback, but the reality of things is that he worked in different systems. His team was constantly adapting to new talent, to new systems, and Brady always excelled in it. So I really like Brady, and I think he is a GOAT. Let's see some of your answers. Stephen White calls him the GOAT. Peter Rizzo says he agrees. Roger says, congratulations, Tom Brady, he's the GOAT. Stevie Mac disagrees. So does BNC. Modern GOAT is Brady, says burner account. Jim Brown was the GOAT in his era. I like that. Rush number 10, says Stephen White. Come on. He's the GOAT in the NFL. 7 rings is hard to argue against, says the real Darrell. And I read a year ago, the Athletic put together these 100 GOATs, 100 best players of all time in the NFL. And it was a list that ended at number 1 with Tom Brady. And in it, writer Jeff Ho wrote a story about Julian Edelman asking him or telling him, hey, how crazy is it that you are 1 ring away from Joe Montana? To which Brady replied, I'm not aiming for Montana. I'm aiming for Jordan. And if you, of course, we cannot compare NBA rings with Super Bowl rings because it's different sports, different competition. But he did leave Jordan in the rearview mirror in quantity of rings, at least. Agree, it's about time his whining ass left, to Kenneth Fraser. I love I love how Kenneth I love how Kenneth, he sprinkled in a little bit of hate in his comment, but the first word of the comment is agrees. So he, game recognized game. All right, he's the GOAT, but it's about time he left the NFL. I love that comment by Kenneth. Alex Flores says that he agrees. Thank you, Alex, for being here on Primetime. Alex is a part of the audience from Primero Cowboys as well as Chava Vargas. Also, look at that. We have Cowboys Nation from Mexico representing here. And he says, saludos from Guadalajara, Mexico. I like that. Thank you, Chava, for being here as well. Aid McCarthy, a West Coast guru, says Michael H. Yeah, he has a lot of West Coast principles. That is right. Chalk says, difference era of who's the GOAT. Brady had excellent defenses when he first came into the league with multiple Hall of Famers when Brady was a game manager. That is right. We've seen a quite this story arc from him. Anyways, guys, thank you for joining ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. I will leave you for tonight. It was a packed show. It was difficult to move on from a complicated topic to different topics, but hey, that's what we do here in ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. We bring you sports content in about everything we needed to take a look at around the NFL on tonight's show. It was needed. Tom Brady has retired. Brian Flores is suing the NFL. Some crazy times, and it will be an interesting week. We will follow this storyline closely for sure. But anyways, guys, thank you for choosing to listen to ADC Sports Dallas Primetime. Shout out to Robbie, Adrian, The Real Darrell, Dallas Young, all of you guys. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. I agree with what Burner Account is saying. We should talk about those topics more often. We definitely should. Thank you, guys. Hit the like button. Share the show. We're here every Sunday through Thursday at 8 p.m. Central here on Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network. For more content, head over to adcsports.com/Dallas. I'm your primetime host, Mauricio Rodríguez. Thank you, and I will see you tomorrow. Thank you, guys.